Brodie, welcome to the show, man. Super
you.
excited to have you. I've been waiting and looking forward to this interview for a while.
Okay.
We've known each other now for almost 2 years, over 2 years, I guess.
Yeah, probably 2.5.
And I have to say,
3, maybe.
it takes me back every time I see you in person how tall you are.
I think that was the first thing you said. Is like, dang, I did not realize how tall
I thought
were.
you were like 5 foot. I thought you were short, actually.
Most people you meet in the social media realm are not normally ginormous people.
Right. You're 6'4"?
I think both of us are probably in the tall category.
Are you 6'5"?
6'5", yeah.
What a beast. She's
I was
athletic
6'4",
specimen.
but I think I grew a little bit more.
So
Yeah.
you were raised in Jacksonville.
Yeah.
Went to
University of Florida, best school ever.
and
Go
what did you
Gators.
study there? Why did you go to Florida?
It was interesting. So I grew up a Ohio State fan. Both my parents went there. We lived in Columbus for a little bit. We moved down to Jacksonville in '96. Florida has they might still have it, I'm not sure, but they had a really good program, which is the Bright Futures Scholarship, which essentially they take money from the lottery. So the Florida lottery, they pull money from that, put it into the scholarship bank, and give it out millions of dollars to students. But you have to go to a Florida school.
Gotcha.
So, growing up, my parents got divorced my freshman year in high school. So, single mom, didn't really have that much money. It was I have to find a scholarship to go to a school. So, it just was one of those things where I knew I was going to have to go to somewhere in Florida. University of Florida was probably one of the best schools to get into, and my sister was already there, so it was kind of a no-brainer. And then just bounced around. Once I got there, I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I love chemistry, so I went into chemical engineering.
I did not know that.
Yeah, did my first organic chem class, which, hey, any chemical engineers out there, if you've taken organic chem, congrats. Wow.
It's brutal, dude.
Did you take it
I didn't have to take
engineer?
organic. I just had to take regular chemistry, which they say is way easier than organic.
Yeah. So I had
And
credit. I already had credit for that. I took AP Chem in high school.
You passed?
Yeah, with a 5, dude.
Wow.
Dude,
You're a
shout out
beast.
to Miss Mitalis. AP Chem.
You're a beast, bro.
Dude, I knew going into college too, I knew I needed to take as many classes as possible to make college cheap. So I think I took like 5 or 7 college classes between junior and senior in high school.
Wow.
So I was going in as like a sophomore pretty much for college. So organic chem was out immediately. And then I was like, all right, well, what do I want to do? Basically, my sophomore year, I changed my major and I went to education. And then, no offense to any education managers out there, but it was one of those things where I didn't want to do early elementary, like early education, or maybe they call it early childhood.
Primary? I don't know.
Like basically anything before high school,
Okay.
you have to actually have an education degree. But to be like a math teacher or a chemistry teacher or one of those for high school, you just have to pass these tests.
Okay.
If that makes sense.
Yeah.
And so I knew I wanted to do that. So I was like, well, I don't want to get an education degree and be like have to only do this my entire life. So I was like, junior year, I was freaking out because I was like, I need to graduate. I don't know what I want to do. So I went to business because that was the easiest to graduate with, like in 2.5 years. So
Then
I did
you
business.
graduated in 2.5 years from Florida.
No.
Oh, I
After
got you.
my
I got you.
sophomore
After you
year.
switched. Okay.
Yeah.
I got you.
Because you have 5 years of Frisbee. Since it's a club
Eligibility.
team, this is a club sport. You get 5 years of eligibility.
Okay.
So after my freshman year, I knew I was going to be in college for 5 years.
Right.
So there really wasn't a rush. So I just wanted to make sure I got out with a degree in 5 years.
So you're a Frisbee legend. If you guys haven't, Brodie's huge on social media and has a lot of things going for him. But I would say your first foyer into the public eye was Frisbee.
Ultimate Frisbee.
Can you
sure.
talk about the trajectory of that?
Yeah, I mean, I grew up playing all sports pretty much. My mom and stepfather were both teaching professionals for tennis, so that was kind of like ingrained at us at a young age, is just getting on the tennis courts and playing. So I kind of had a background in everything. Wasn't really ever great enough in high school to really push myself towards something. I kind of always played something for a little bit and then switched to the next sport. And then kind of found out about Ultimate Frisbee my senior year in high school. We would play it every once in a while with the cross-country team because there's so much running. And then once my sister went to college at the University of Florida, she got connected with someone that was actually on the Ultimate Frisbee team. And she was like, Brodie, you're going to come here. You want to come down and do a practice?
Wow.
So that was my first time actually introduced to like ultimate frisbee, because what we were playing in high school like once a month was not ultimate frisbee.
Right.
So once I saw that, I went home right after that trip down to Gainesville, bought a bunch of frisbees, and then that whole summer I basically taught myself how to throw a forehand and a backhand.
Wow.
So we only knew how to throw it basically like this side. So like a backhand in tennis, that was the only way anyone knew how to throw. And these guys were throwing on the other side of their body, which I was like, I never knew that was possible. So I taught myself how to throw a forehand that summer before I went to University of Florida and tried out for the team. And then tried out my freshman year. We won a national championship my freshman year. And we had 18 guys, which is really, really weird because most teams, it's 7-on-7. So most teams have 7 starters for offense, 7 starters for defense. So that's 14 dudes. And then most teams have like 10 to 15 like other dudes. So teams have anywhere from like 25 to like 30 people on their team. And we were rocking 18 at nationals. So we had like 3 guys that played every point.
Wow.
And I was lucky enough to be on the starting offense, so I kind of got to have a lot of experience at a high level my freshman year. And just absolutely after that year just fell in love with it and was like, this is the sport for me. I got to keep playing this.
I didn't know there was offense and defensive. I viewed it more as like soccer, where it's flexible, always moving.
So you have to. So that's the thing is, if you have to be an elite player, you have to be able to do both.
Okay.
You can't just be a super good offensive player and an awful defensive player, because it is like soccer where the frisbee can be turned over and all of a sudden you're on defense when you were on offense. But there are teams that there are players that specialize in one versus the other. So you might have someone similar in football. You might have someone that's really, really fast, really quick, good at cutting, but might not have the best throws.
Okay.
So instead of putting that person on offense, you put him on defense and have him just guard someone.
Right.
So, yeah.
That makes sense. Do you feel like I'd never heard of ultimate frisbee until I went to college. Is that kind of the demographic, like college age kids? Because I know there's a professional league, but I feel like in college, frisbee was so popular.
Mm-hmm.
Talk about the demographic of people that watch it. How big is the viewing of it?
It's been a weird kind of trend of trending up and trending down over the last couple of years, I would say. One of those reasons is because a lot of organizations in ultimate frisbee aren't willing to all get behind each other essentially and push, right?
Right.
If you look at other sports, there's really like that one league or that one thing that really pushes the sport, and then everything else kind of grows off of that. So you have like the NFL, for example. Like if the NFL didn't exist in the United States, you probably wouldn't have as many flag football leagues. You wouldn't probably have as many peewee football leagues. Like the NFL is the thing that drives all these other creations of people playing the sport. And right now, I think in ultimate frisbee, the last couple of years, we've had multiple organizations trying to take that spot, and the other ones not really supporting one another. And the problem with that is we're not that big of a sport. So if you have people already in the sport not really supporting one another, it's only going to kind of deteriorate and worsen the sport in the sense of exposure. So that's difficult. There's also a huge split in people with the spirit of the game, which is a very unique thing to ultimate frisbee, where every other sport for the most part calls it sportsmanship. Ultimate frisbee has a unique term for it called spirit of the game. And you have some people that are super high on that fence, and you have some people that are like, no, I'm all for sportsmanship, but we don't need to make it something different than every other sport. And that's a huge divide, because the spirit of the game people really want to play without referees. The way that the game was initially designed was everyone calls their own calls because of spirit of the game. No one's going to cheat. No one's going to lie. No one's going to not play by the rules. But for everyone that's played a competitive, high-level stakes sport, we all know you might not be cheating on purpose, but it's very difficult when you're at that level and intensity to be able to start calling the game yourself.
Right.
So that's like kind of a big divide, and spirit of the game doesn't really translate that well to youth. Right? Like if you're going to sign your kid up for a sport, trying to convince you to have your son or daughter play a sport where there's no referees, there's no like
Interesting.
any sort of like
Yeah.
establishment of the game being played properly, it's tough,
Mhm.
you know?